Hello, welcome to our second installment, I guess. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the equitation pattern here on the right. I find that a lot of people tend to not freak out, but patterns tend to make people nervous. And I feel like writing patterns, especially for those that are younger or just starting showing, a little bit more so. I'm not 100% sure why, but it just kind of seems that way. If you didn't see the first video, that one talked about showmanship. I'll probably also have one talking about horsemanship. I have a pattern already picked out for that one as well. But I'm hopeful that in this video I will be able to, for someone just starting, kind of explain to you, what does this mean, the wording over here, as well as how do we lay out, how do we kind of perform, memorize, look at a pattern when we see it for the first time. So I picked out a pattern that I feel like is pretty simple. I mean, it has all the elements. It has a, sitting trot. It's got a posting trot on each diagonal. It's got a little walk. It's got some cantering. It has a back. This pattern doesn't have any pivots. In equitation, you can have turns on the hind quarter or the forequarter. I am assuming with this video, and I'm just talking, just about this pattern. I'm not talking about how should you ride, what should you wear, what kind of bit should you use. I mean, that's up to, it depends on your horse, it depends on your riding ability, how trained your horse is, your rules for your association, where you are just in your riding adventure. Like, it depends. So I'm only talking about this pattern and how I would explain it if you were sitting in front of me and asking, I have no idea what to do, what do I do? So, as I mentioned in the showmanship pattern, the words, the writing, takes precedence over the drawing. The drawing is a guide. If you have questions, and if possible, you can normally ask the judge or your show secretary to then ask the judge for clarification if there's something that's really, really confusing. But yeah, let's just, same thing with the showmanship. We're going to be going over these three things. And first and foremost, what is the judge looking for in this pattern? So when I look at this pattern, I really only see a couple elements to the shape of it. First and foremost, you have two straight lines, and you have a circle, and up here you have a half circle kind of curve. So if I was a judge, I would probably position myself over here, actually right about here. So that way I can see the entire pattern. And trust me, a judge can tell, like, if you're coming from here and you end up over here, or if you end up over here. They'll be able to see. It's their job to be able to see if your lines are straight or crooked. So you want to make sure that when you're riding this line and this line, that you pick something. Like up here, it can be a post, it can be a person, it can be a tree, whatever. Pick something here and pick something here to look at. And for your circle, we'll get into that. Let's start with the writing, the wording first. So in this pattern, we're assuming this is cone A. This is a start, but it's cone A. This is cone B. I have them in green when it references them. And I have, when it tells you explicitly, like, kind of where in the pattern to do things, I have that in yellow. And you might have seen in the showmanship pattern, I did the same thing, but I didn't really mention it. These aren't scripted, in case you're wondering. This is me just kind of you know, impromptu. If you came up and asked me how to do this. So, in yellow we have the midpoint. That's really the only reference in this pattern as to kind of where you should put things, except for when it tells you the cones. So, starting from your start cone, you're going to go towards the midpoint of the arena. Now, when it says the midpoint of the arena, my first thing is, when I hear midpoints, I think kind of the center, like not just the center, side to side, but I also think this way. But depending on where they put the start cone can change that. So for the most part, think of midpoint of your arena as, instead, I would say midpoint of your pattern. Your pattern, I can tell you. Your pattern is what I would say. Because if you are in a gigantic arena, like something that's like just, obnoxiously large, and the cone is like right at, the one end of the arena, you're not going to go all the way to the very, like, edge of the arena. If you got something giant, like a 200 by 500 arena or something, you're not going to do that. So, the midpoint of your pattern is what I would say. So, you kind of have to know going, with this B cone, that's kind of your midpoint. It kind of gives you that. So the midpoint is where B is, basically. So then you perform a circle around B at the posting trot. So you start off sitting trot, do. When you get even with B, you need to do two things. You need to pick up the correct diagonal, and you need to start thinking about your circle. So your sitting trot and your posting trot, like speed, and I'm air quoting speed wise, you don't want your sitting trot to be like a little Western pleasure jog. It needs to be an English, a hunt seat trot. But that doesn't mean it needs to be like the biggest giant strided trot ever. It needs to be, a trot, but it doesn't need to be crazy. But I feel like a posting trot has a little bit more speed, just a little bit more reach in the stride. So once you get to B, number one, pick up the correct diagonal. That's your first goal. Pick up the correct diagonal first. I am assuming with this, diagonals, I'm assuming, you can look up other videos. I'm sure, like, you have other people, whether you're showing in 4-H or open shows or breed shows. I'm assuming you have someone or some other resources. So, you get to B. Try not to look down. Yes, the judge can tell when you look down to get your diagonal. Now, if you're just starting and you're struggling to find your diagonals, you can practice by keeping your chin up and looking down with your eyes. That's probably the biggest, like, cheat, kind of thing that you can do with picking up your diagonals. Otherwise, it's learning to feel them. Some horses that are really, have a active stride will kind of throw you into it, especially on a circle. So practice, figure that out at home. So get your diagonal, and I would go, depending on how big you plan on making this, 1 to 2, maybe 3 strides straight on your circle. So the thing with circles in riding patterns, they have a straight line. So let me explain a little bit more. So you have this straight line. In any pattern that you have a straight line, you come off and do a circle, and it's a straight line again. When you come up here, you're not going to automatically come here. A lot of people, a lot of people, when they come in, as soon as they see this cone, they're like, circle. Especially people that are young or just starting, you know, as soon as they come here and they're like, oh my god, I need to make a circle right around it. And they come out and they go here. And like, I promise you, if you're in an arena and you can, like, if you have dug up dirt and you can see where you go, you will be able to tell right away. If you are standing like back here along your straight line, if your stride or two right after the cone is like over here, you probably ended up with one of two things. Either you had to make this really tight and small, or you had to drift really far down here to make it work. So whenever you have a circle, and this is, you know, a trot or a lope, doesn't matter if you're, whatever event you're showing in, if you need to come off of a straight line, make a circle and come back, go like 1 to 3 strides straight, depending on how big your circle is going to be, then start your curve. Because what that does is it gives you this line. And when you come around, you're doing your diagonal, you're trotting. And I would say that you want to be kind of straight-ish on the line here. Because a lot of times in patterns, they'll have you, you know, make a transition, like this pattern does. They'll have you do a lead change. They'll have you stop and pivot. So if you come in here, and like maybe you start off really good and you're, you know, making a nice circle. But if you start cutting in and you're going like this here, kind of almost how they have this drawn, I'm not crazy about it, like this, you're coming in here and say you're like, oh, I need to walk, but you're coming this way, that's automatically going to push your entire pattern this way. And while it doesn't make a huge difference, depending on the size that you plan for the rest of this, if you're in a narrow arena and like your wall is right here, you pushing this over to here even makes this much tighter. And that creates issues for you to pick up a nice lead over here. So try and always have like 3 or 4 strides on the straightaway of your circle. And this takes practice, this takes time. One thing, if you are new to showing and you're trying to kind of get a feel for this, is make a figure 8. So pretend that there's another circle here, make a figure 8, but have 4 cones, cans of hairspray, boots, random objects, plants, rocks, whatever. Make them in a small kind of rectangle here, rectangle shape here. So you have to be straight here. And I would also say pick something to stare at up here along your straight line. Look at that. Wow, we're already at 13 minutes. And we're, you know, halfway through, not even. So, you get your diagonal. You're going to break to a walk, close the circle, break to a walk, approximately 3 to 5 steps. That's about a horse length, about a stride and a half. It's not very long. So you want to make sure that once you get, you know, you're on your straight line, you're comfortable, break to a walk, walk a couple steps, pick up your left posting trot, half circle, left diagonal. So then canter on right lead until straight line. So it doesn't say where. It just says a half circle on the left diagonal and then pick up your lead. So again, I would go straight on your trot. Don't like pick up the trot and automatically turn, because if you do that, you're going to probably push this to be smaller. And if this is smaller, you're going to have to ask for the right lead right after a pretty sharp turn. And it's not very pretty. You want your pattern to be pretty. So make a nice smooth curve. And like what I mentioned with the showmanship pattern, when I'm here, I'm already looking over here. I'm looking like a quarter to a half of the circle ahead of where I'm going. I'm planning where I need to end up. So you get your left diagonal. Now, before you ask for your canter, you're going to sit. You don't want to be posting while you're asking for the canter. I know hunter jumpers, they can and do canter out of their posting trot because, you know, for jumping and things, you need to kind of be on top of the ball. But for a equitation pattern, we normally want it to be pretty smooth. And if you're up in your post and your horse goes to take off and you're still like up out of your seat, it doesn't look good. Kind of shows the judge that your horse is just kind of like running away. And you don't want to do that. So finish your trot. Make sure you're straight. Pick something down here to look at. Once you're straight, ask for the canter, get your lead, and stay straight. Like, do not drift side to side. Nice forward canter. This shouldn't be a Western pleasure, I'm on the rail lope. This should be a canter, but this also shouldn't be I'm charging away, I'm at, you know, the races. Like, it should just be a under control, forward, you know, 3-beat gait. Once you get down here, you want the horse's nose to shoulder, traditionally the shoulder to the rider, to be even with this cone when you stop. You don't want to stop and have the horse's butt or like past it here, nor do you want to stop or like break to a trot, then walk, then stop. You want it to be from a canter to a stop. So that's going to take some preparing on your part. You're going to need to practice. You get here, stop, back, 1 horse length. 1 horse length is 3 to 5 steps, as I mentioned before. If it's going bad, do 3. If it's going well, do 5. That's kind of the rule of thumb. Exit at a walker trot. So the judge is going to be looking, are these lines straight? Is your circle an actual circle with a little bit of a straight edge here? That doesn't mean you come out and do like, come out here and sharp turn. This means plan to make this a little bit wide and make it nice and straight here. Takes practice. How would I go about memorizing this pattern? Well, this pattern is actually really nice in the fact that there's nothing like weird. So you start off sitting, you're going to make a circle to the left and you're going to post on the right diagonal. That's normal. When you're tracking with your right shoulder to the rail, you post with the right diagonal. Rise and fall with the leg on the wall, people. So right diagonal around, you're going to walk. Then for this one, when your left shoulder is on the outside of your circle, you're going to post on the left diagonal. That makes sense. And when you're on the rail and your left shoulder is to the rail, you're going to pick up the right lead. So the right leg is going to lead out front. Stop and back. So it's not like anything here is super crazy. Like, you're not posting on the wrong diagonal. You're not picking up the, I mean, it's not even that crazy if you would pick up the left lead here. But everything makes sense. And that's kind of why I picked this pattern. So memorizing wise, it's just the shape. So if I was memorizing this, I would pick something at this halfway point, or where I wanted my halfway point to be, and I would kind of look outside of the arena. Okay, maybe there's a post here, maybe there's a sign, maybe the crow's nest is here, something is here. Maybe mom and dad goes and stands there, I don't know. And when you get to that, do your 1 or 2 couple strides past, make your circle, plan a couple strides here to be straight, then finish here. But this, you need to be loping about at the same point where you started trotting. They have it a little early here. I would make it so it's even. And you'll notice a judge will take note of where, you know, when did you start your trot here? Do you start walking at that same point? Is this an even, you know, a couple strides? Is this your steps correct? So I've been talking for almost 20 minutes. Yeah, this is a fairly simple pattern. It's not that difficult. I would practice it at home. If you have questions, you can comment below. I will try and get to them. yeah, I'll talk about horsemanship next time. I have a pretty fun, here, do I show you? I have a pretty fun pattern to talk about next time. So, thank you, and I hope to see you soon.